The psalm that Jen read earlier really spoke to me this week. It's Psalm 139. As I read the comforting words, I felt the anxiety that has been a rather constant companion ease a bit. My shoulders released some tension. The knots that are in my stomach 24/7 started to loosen a little. And I hope that the psalmist's reassurance are able to do something similar for you as well. This is a time that we really need to know that God is with us. We need to remember that we are not alone, ever. And this is mostly reassuring. I guess there are times when it's a little disconcerting too. This seems to be the case with Nathaniel, who is really taken aback that Jesus knows so much about him before they've even met. I think there's a part of us that wants to be known, while there's also a part of us that prefers to remain hidden. Our churches, the ones we worship in here in Vermont, aren't super big. And even when we do worship in person, we have this feeling of really knowing one another and being known by the others with whom we worship. Those of us who've made the choice to worship in these smaller churches really appreciate this. We like being a part of a circle of people who know each other, who care for one another, who rather intentionally choose to walk with each other on our faith journeys. But I also know some folks have a hard time with this. Some people prefer a large, spacious sanctuary where they can slip in and out of the back pew without anyone really taking notice of them. And the COVID crisis has brought this difference up in a whole new way, since you can choose to join us on Zoom and smile from a square on the computer screen. You can dial in by phone. You can watch the service afterward. Or maybe you prefer to just take the bulletin and scriptures and read them over quietly by yourself on your own time. The thing for us all to remember, though, is that no matter how public or private we are, God knows us. And God loves us with a deep and abiding love. Basically, God doesn't leave us alone. That's what the psalmist is telling us. And this is true both in good times and in bad, in ways we may appreciate and in ways that we may struggle with. As the psalmist says, there is nowhere we can go to escape God's Spirit. Nowhere we can flee from God's presence. God is with us in the places that upset us and in the times that frighten us down to our bones. Whenever I go into a place that's unfamiliar to me, I try to remember that God is already there. And this brings me a sense of comfort. It may not take away all of my concerns about going to a new place, but it does help. When I find myself in an uncomfortable situation or when I need to meet a whole bunch of new people, I try to remember that God arrived there before I did, and that each person in that gathering is one of God's beloved children. As divided as we may feel now in this country and even in some of our families, this is the foundational truth. Every single person we encounter, no matter where we meet them, is one of God's beloved children. This is true of people who think radically differently. It's of people who look different than us, who worship differently than us. The reality of any situation is that God already loves every person involved. So the least we can do really is be kind and respectful toward one another. And to me, this also speaks of what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was fond of calling the beloved community. All of us, without exception, are meant to be included in God's beloved community. Think of how Jesus responded to Nathanael after Nathanael had basically badmouthed Jesus and his hometown, saying, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" These might be fighting words for some, but Jesus didn't take it personally. Jesus diffused the situation by telling Nathanael that He already knew him, perhaps implying that Nathanael ought to give Jesus a similar respect, perhaps affirming that Nathanael was already a part of the community that God was building through Jesus. When I was a young Christian, I had the sense that I needed to somehow protect God from some of the wilder ideas I had or was aware of out in the world. I thought that some things that happened out there, out away from church, away from the faith experience, were just too secular for God to know about. As I look back on that attitude, it was as if I saw God as some wonderfully loving but rather naive grandparent, and that it was my responsibility to protect God from the harsh realities of human life. But nothing can be further from the truth. God is not just the God of a safe life, a life filled with kind people. God is God of this entire world and of everyone in it. God can take whatever we have to share, the painful parts of our lives, experiences that embarrass us or frustrate us, or simply cause us pain. Jesus, you'll remember, regularly hung out with people that others deemed unacceptable. The people some would even call disparagingly the dregs of society. People from places where others thought nothing good could possibly come, as Nathanael did about Nazareth. So when the psalmist says to God, "You have searched me and known me," I'm reassured that God really does love me, in spite of any hurtful things I may have said or done. But the beauty at the heart of all of this is that God doesn't really see us for our faults and failings. God sees through all of those with the eyes of love. God sees who we truly are at our core, our essence, our soul. I'm reassured by this because there are some days when I'm not fun to be with. Some days when I get angry with very little cause, days when I don't even know why I say some of the things I say. On days like that, it really helps to know that God sees me for who I really am deep down inside. And because of this, I can take that deep breath that I really find helpful and let go of whatever is driving me in that moment and give myself over to God instead. God knows how we're feeling, even when the words we speak are inadequate, even when they're wrong. God knows how we're feeling when we can't even find words to describe our state of mind. I think we all need to hear this today. In this world where so many things are uncertain, it feels good to have this one sure thing to hold on to. We can rest in the sure and certain knowledge that God knows us inside and out and loves us deeply. We can rest in the knowledge that God holds us just as we cling to God and our faith. Maybe we can imagine this kind of like a big hug or sitting in someone's lap that loves us very, very much. And we all feel just a little bit braver when we're held in that solid hug, right? As people of faith, we have this lifeline that goes directly to God. And it's good for us to remember that no matter what else is going on in the world, God holds us, just as God holds the entire world in love. My friend Steve Garnaas Holmes wrote a beautiful poem prayer that reflects this, and I ask that it be our prayer today. The beloved sees you, knows you, inner you, soul you, not the faults and failures, not your alibis, not the gold and silver medals, not what you or others think of you, but the soul inside the story, the heart beneath the wounds, what God created and has always loved, the thou of you, seen without judgment, known without blame, named, beloved, treasured. Welcome it. You can stop pretending. Let yourself become the one God knows.